Today we're going to install another touchscreen mod for your 3D printer, but this one has a bit of a twist. Yes, today we will be installing and checking out the BigtreetechTFT35 version 3 touchscreen, but before we do that, I want to use this video as an excuse to convert log back over to the SKR 1.3 mainboard. Now, a while back we did do a video on how to install that board. You can check that out up here. But log has been through a lot of different iterations of mainboard since then, testing out different things. It currently has an Ultimachine Mini Rambo installed. Now, before we go making any changes to a 3D printer, I like to check the printer's current state, just to make sure it's working right now before I start making a lot of changes to it. So let's go ahead and do that before we get started. And this is exactly why I test things out before I start making changes. This printer currently has some sort of 2.5 version of Prusa firmware installed on it. I was probably testing that out for someone. Let's get it back to a version of Marlin that I know is stable so we can test the machine. So I believe the last time log was actually working was when we did the MMU2 install on Marlin 2.0. This version of Marlin that I found does say it's 2.0 and I tagged MMU2 on the end, so maybe this is the one that might work. Let's open this up in VScode and have a look. We'll just import project, find our folder. We'll go ahead and select our Mini Rambo for now. We'll take a look in configuration.h just to make sure that everything's set correctly before I upload. And since I'm pretty sure this is the one I used for the MMU2 install, I'm going to search for that, MMU2, and it is enabled. I'm not going to be using it in this video, so let's go ahead and comment it out. I also had to change extruders back down to 1. That's just an MMU2 change. It was set to 5. But we should be good on everything else. So we can go ahead and build. We'll hit Platform IO. We'll find our environment for Rambo right here. We'll hit Build. The build looks good. Now we can go ahead and hit Upload. We're cabled up USB. Let's hit it. Upload's complete. And that version of firmware looks much better. But let's go ahead and kick off a print just to make sure everything's okay. So it looks like log is back up and running, operating correctly in its current configuration. Now, log is not the most quiet 3D printer out there, but let's go ahead and take a look. So log is up and running and it looks like it's printing successfully. So now I'm going to be more comfortable making changes to it. So I'm going to switch out to the SKR 1.3 mainboard. And there's a couple reasons for this. The SKR 1.3 is really popular right now because it's an affordable 32-bit board. So I get a lot of questions about this board. Making this my test rig for the SKR should make it easier for me to answer questions if people have them. Also, I want to test out this BigTreeTech screen, and it is directly compatible with this board, probably as well as others, but this should be the best candidate to install that screen on. So I've already done the SKR 1.3 mainboard install video, so for this install, I'm just going to time-lapse the whole thing. I'll be back in a couple minutes. And before I start the teardown, I just wanted to mention real quick that I found this Prusa light cover that fits the 1.3, and it should fit the same screw pattern as the stock board cover on the Prusa machine like I use on log. It fits this board pretty well. It sits in here just like this, and you have access to your USB and your SD card. Now on with removing the Mini Rambo and installing the SKR. The Mini Rambo's out, now time to put the SKR back in. Just a tip, for now, I'm going to plug my hot-end fan into this one right here, this constant power, and then I'm going to use fan 1 right here for my part fan, but I might consider using this HE1 for my hot-end fan so that I can put it on a thermostat later. So when it reaches a certain temperature, it'll kick it on, but leave it off most of the time. For now, I'm just going to keep it constant. And for the two Z motors for now, I'm just going to go with the adapter that I made and used last time. It seems to work pretty well, but you can also use Z and E1 if you want to use both those motors. I'm also going to cable up my stock LCD screen for now, just to test it. I just want to make sure it works before I go to the new screen. So the SKR board is installed and it's up and running. The only issue I really ran into was the case that I selected for the board. It didn't quite fit the way I wanted it to. The door didn't line up quite right. So I might go back and try to rework that later, but it should work for this screen install. Now we have to find some firmware that's going to work for this SKR board, because I really don't know what version's on it right now. So let's jump back to the computer and get back into VScode. So I do still have the code that I used on the original SKR install. So let's go ahead and import that. I don't know that it's going to work still, but it's a good starting point anyway. Since we build for a specific environment when we build the code, it really doesn't matter what board you select up here. I'm just going to leave it at 2560 for now. There are a few LPC 1768s up there, but again, it's not going to matter much. So let's go ahead and import. We can go ahead and open up our configuration.h, and it is still configured for SKR 1.3. We should be configured for 2208s in UART mode. And we are. It says 2208 right here. The other thing I wanted to set was the screen. For now, I'm going to set it to the 2004 RipWrap display. And it says it's already configured for RipWrap Discount Smart Controller, so we should be good there. So let's start with this configuration. We'll go ahead and upload. We are cabled USB. SD card is in the board. So platform I/O. We'll go to the 1768 environment. And we'll hit build. And it failed. Now there's a couple of reasons why it could fail. So these are kind of your troubleshooting steps if you're struggling with Marlin 2.0 and VScode or Atom. You can see some of the errors up here. It's got a few things complaining about TMC platforms not being included in LP176X. There's two things that I would check. First, make sure your libraries are up to date. So let's jump back to PIO Home. We'll go to Libraries. And if you click on Updates, you'll see there's a handful of libraries that need an update, including the TMC stepper library. That might be what's causing the issue. So if you have libraries that need to be updated, go ahead and update them all. All of my libraries have been updated. Now I'm not saying that this is the issue, but it can't hurt anything. So go ahead and do it if you're having problems. And then we'll just go ahead and try to build again. And it still failed with the same errors. Now your only option pretty much at this point is to go grab a brand new version of 2.0, because probably something within those libraries versus the code you're using has changed, and you're going to have to update to the newest version of Marlin. And since we're still in the pre-release version of Marlin 2.0, this is probably going to happen until we get an actual official release. So let's go grab Marlin again. We'll head to Marlin Firmware, we'll go to Download, Download Bug Fix 2.0. Our download's complete. We'll right-click Extract All, and we'll just extract this one as New SKR. It has been extracted. Let's jump back to VScode, back to our File Explorer. I'm going to right-click on the folder we were using, and I'm going to remove from Workspace. Back to PIO Home, I'm going to import my new folder. New SKR, Marlin Bug Fix 2.0. Again, select whichever board you'd like, and we'll hit import. Now we can expand Marlin over here. Marlin, we'll open up configuration.h. And if you go to source and then core, you can look at the boards.h. This is a list of all the boards that you can use in Marlin 2.0. Let's scroll down to the 1768 section right here. And let's just grab our BigTree 1.3 board name right here. And we'll copy back to configuration.h. In motherboards, we're just going to paste that right in here. And before we change anything else, let's just make sure that it's going to build with that 1768 environment. So back to platform I/O, 1768, let's hit build. And the build was successful. So with the newer version of Marlin, we can compile correctly. Now this hasn't been configured for my printer, so I'm going to have to run through here and change all of these settings to get it to work. And I've showed you this before, but the easiest way for me to do this is to compare it in Notepad++, my old version versus the new version. So we'll open up Notepad++, we'll open up our old configuration.h and our new configuration.h. If we go to plugins and hit compare, we can see them side by side, and now I can just go through here and make my changes. We can update the author. We'll change our serial port to -1. We already updated our motherboard name. We'll change the 3D printer name. Update our bed thermistor. We'll update our end stop settings. We'll update our drivers to 2208s. We'll update our step counts, our max feed rates, acceleration I'll leave default, our probe offset settings, my minimum probe edge. Again, this is just for my printer. The stepper motor inverting, it always seems like I have to come back and adjust this again anyway, but I will make them the same. Bed size 250, I make mine 220 so the probing is correct. That's just a bit of a workaround for me. Y minimum position, -2. Max height, 210. We'll enable bed leveling, bilinear. If you're looking for exact probe positions, they have moved to configuration_adv.h, so we'll circle back to that in a moment. I use safe homing, but I do it in a specific spot in the front left to hit that first probe point. So I change mine to 35 and 19.5. I enable EEPROM. I change my default preheat values. I'm going to enable SD support, the speaker, and I'm going to define RipWrap Discount Smart Controller to start with. That's the default 2004 screen that I have installed. We should be good on the rest of this file. Now let's jump over to configuration_adv.h, and I need to set the probe positions. And that's going to be this section right here. I'm going to uncomment all 4 of these lines, and it should translate one for one by reading these comments up here. So we'll do 35, 240.5, 19.5, and then 216. And hopefully that'll be all we have to tweak. So let's go ahead and save this file, our configuration_adv, and our configuration.h. Now we can head back to VScode. Since changes have been made, let's go ahead and close our configuration.h, and let's close out of VScode, and we'll open it back up again. Open up configuration.h. We'll verify one of our changes. We changed the bed thermistor, so we know that the changes have been picked up, the ones we made in Notepad++. And let's try to build again. Platform IO, 1768, build. And we forgot one change, and that is to enable a fixed mounted probe right here. Let's try it again. And it completed successfully that time, so let's go ahead and upload it. It should be able to pick up your SD card on your SKR board if you're plugged in USB. If not, you might have to hand truck your SD card over to your computer to load it up. I forgot to update my custom printer name, take the comment off. I updated that, it's going to upload here in a second. Now the screen that I use on log is an LDO screen, and they're a little different from the standard 2004 RipWrap discount screen. To get that to work with the plugs on the SKR, all I'd have to do is flip the plugs over, the little plastic parts on the back of the screen, and that should work correctly. It's just a little bit different pinout. So I just got the generic screen out. It is working just fine. There we go. Now the name's updated. That's a lot better. Now that the configuration's done and uploaded, let's move around a little bit, make sure everything's working correctly. We'll do some X. X looks good. Y. We're good. Z. Z is correct. Let's go ahead and auto home. Homing looks good. Let's go ahead and heat up, make sure that's working. 215, 60 on the bed. Everything seems to be preheating well. Let's do some extrudes to make sure the extruder's turning the right way. Let's go ahead and check our ABL with G29. The leveling sequence seems to be going well. So after it's done, we'll go ahead and start a test print just to make sure everything's running smoothly. We'll just start it from our SD card. And it looks like the first layer is going down really well, but just to compare it, let's wait until the part fan comes on and then we'll take a listen. So now log is back to operating on the SKR 1.3 main board on the 2208 drivers, and it's a lot quieter now. Now I know it took a long time to get to the main subject of this video, but hopefully walking through some of those troubleshooting steps while installing your SKR and Marlin 2.0 is going to be helpful to some folks. So now we're going to look at the touchscreen from BigtreetTech. It's the TFT35. So here's the screen we're going to be installing. It's a 3.5-inch touchscreen, but it also has a click wheel, reset button, and the speaker on the front, and there's a reason for that. If we take a look at the back side, we have a lot of your standard stuff, your full SD card reader. We have USB support, that should work just like the SD card. We have a plug where we can interface with an ESP8266 for Wi-Fi connectivity. And there's a bunch of other features on here you can use we're not going to test today, but there is a 5-volt constant plug if you need it. There's a filament runout detection plug that this screen can utilize. You can hook up a switch there. They have a couple of different UART interfaces that you can use. You have the standard TFT plug down here. That's what you'd use with most of these types of touchscreens. That way you can use the software on the screen to control the printer directly. And then we have these EXP 1 through 3 connections over here. And these are the ones that I'm most interested in. And that's because this isn't just your regular touchscreen. This will also emulate a 12864 screen. That's the rip-rap full graphics screen that you see on a lot of printers. And that's pretty cool to see that emulated, so you can switch to the old school if you want to. So I definitely want to check that out. So I downloaded this bezel for this screen off of Thingiverse, link in the description. And I altered the Prusa mounts so that I can install them on the threaded rod just like the Prusa screen does, but it will fit the touchscreen case. I'll link these as well. So hopefully if I design these parts correctly, we can just set the screen down in here like this. Then my holders should just set down on the sides. They should allow for all the components so they don't get in the way. One there. The screws will just pass through these pieces and you can thread them into the plastic front. I'm going to use M3 by 8mm screws. Now the holders are on. Those should just zip tie on the threaded rods. Let's go ahead and take the old screen off. We can unplug our test screen here. We won't need that anymore. We'll cut the zip ties on the holders. Slide that off. And our new one should just sit right here in the stock position. It should clear the bed, no worries. It does. And then we can just zip tie that back on. We'll put our knob back on there. This is the stock knob that the screen comes with. I might need to adjust my mounts just a little bit and make them a little lower. It's just a little wonky, but it does clear the bed, so we're going to go on with the test. The first configuration I want to do is get it up in touchscreen mode. That's where you're going to connect it into the transmit and receive pins, the serial TFT on the SKR board, and we'll boot it up. Since it's really hard to see in the control board box, I'm going to show you on my backup SKR 1.3 board how to connect that screen. On the cable they give you with the screen for this TFT connection, the one with the dotted line, the longer dash, that's the 5-volt line. On the opposite side, it has the minus sign, the really thin dash all the way down. So you hook these up to the TFT pins, just like this. Again, this side, 5-volt pin, the wider dash. This side, the reset pin, the thinner dash. And on the screen side, the 5-pin plug will just go right here, just like that. But while we're in here, we might as well hook up EXP 1 and 2 connections because we can flip-flop back and forth. If you're using the SKR Mini or the E3 board, you can use the EXP3. We can just use the standard EXP 1 and 2. So our EXP2 cable will go right here, and our EXP1 cable will go right here. Now we should be cabled up, ready to test the screen out. And obviously something isn't right here. The screen is upside down. Now I would think you'd want the control knob on the right side. Most of them are. So obviously you should be able to flip the screen over. So let's go into settings. And we'll go into rotate UI. Now all you have to do is run through the calibration sequence. So you'll hit the red dots, and then the one in the center, and we're flipped the right way. So problem averted. Now you'll see that the screen says no printer attached. That's because these screens for some reason don't like to operate at a 250,000 baud rate. You'll see it says 115200 down here. You can change that on this screen, but it doesn't seem to work for some reason. We're going to need to get back into VScode into Marlin and make some adjustments. So back into Marlin, we have this serial port, our main serial port, as -1. I usually suggest you set it to -1 if you're having problems connecting to your board USB, but now we actually have another serial device on that bus. So we're going to change -1 to 0. Now, if you disconnect that screen, this might cause you problems. You might have to go back to -1, but this should make the screen work for now. And then our baud rate down here, we're going to change from 250,000 to 11,500. And we had to get in here anyway because I wanted to change the 2004 riprap screen over to the full graphic one. So let's go ahead and do a find on riprap. You'll have to hit it a few times. Here's the discount smart controller that we currently have enabled. We're going to comment that one out. We're going to search for riprap again. And a few more down, you're going to find the riprap discount full graphic smart controller. We're going to uncomment that. That will allow us to use the emulated section of our screen. That should get us working. Let's go ahead and we'll re-upload. Remember, LPC 1768, connected USB, hit upload. After the upload's complete, we'll power off the printer. We'll power it back on. And after a couple seconds, that message will disappear and the screen will connect. We can go ahead and try it out a bit. Let's just go to heat. Let's increase it. Let's switch from nozzle to print bed. Let's jump that up. The print bed did kick on. Let's go back. Let's home the printer. We'll hit home. Everything is homing. Let's go back. We'll slide our SD card in. Card inserted. You can hit print. You can choose the TFT SD or the onboard SD. That's the one on the SKR. Or the USB drive. That's over here if you have one. We'll just go TFT SD. And we have all of our print files. Just for good measure, let's go ahead and hit print. It's going to give us a status. We're heating up. And we're off and printing once again, just like before. And let's go ahead and check the firmware version on this screen. We'll go to Settings. We'll hit More Settings. And we'll hit Info. The current firmware version is version 3.0.21. If you need to upgrade that firmware, you can just head out to BigTree's GitHub, link in the description. We'll head to Touchscreen Firmware, and I want to go to Releases right here. Latest release .23. I want to click on Source Code Zip. We'll go to Downloads. We'll extract that file. Then inside this folder, we'll have a copy to SD root. That's going to be your bin file. And then in here, we'll have the code that we can upload the bin file to our screen. We want the BigtreeTech 3.0.23. That's the most recent. That's the one I'm most comfortable with uploading to the screen. I want to right-click, copy, and I want to copy that to an SD card. We'll paste it right here to the SD. And then we should be able to take that SD card, mount it on our screen, and then reboot the printer, and it will update the screen. So let's remove the card. We'll mount that on the screen. Let's turn the printer off. We'll turn the printer on. You can see it's updating. Then when it reboots, printer is attached, settings, info. We're on version 3.0.23. It's been updated. So the touchscreen looks good. It works just fine. It has a lot of different features in it, and there's a lot of different things you can do with the board. Filament runout. It has a lot of extra space on the back where you can integrate other things. Way too much for this video. But this screen in particular has that emulation feature, which I really like. And if you're old school like me, you just want a simple screen that looks good. So I want to check that feature out now. Now, by far, the coolest feature about this screen, and the reason why I did this video all together, is the 12.864 emulator. And it's real easy to jump back and forth in between the touchscreen and that LCD display. All you have to do is hold the knob button down for 3 seconds. Then you get this menu, and the one that is highlighted in green is the one you're going to go into. So we'll scroll down one to the 12.864 simulator. We'll hit the button, and here it is, the screen that we're all used to. It just makes me feel right at home. This nice screen with this green screen emulator on it, it feels so good to have this on my 3D printer. If we click the button, we've got all our usual Marlin 2.0 stuff, motion, temperature. We can auto home. It works just fine. Temperature, let's raise it up just a bit just to make sure it works. Let's print from media. Grab our Benchy. Print. And we're off and printing again, just like the original LCD and the touchscreen. No issues at all. And there it is. The BigtreetechTFT35 version 3 touchscreen install is now complete. I have to say the touchscreen is pretty cool. It's a lot like all the other touchscreens you can get on your 3D printer, but this one has the feature of going old school with that emulated screen, and I think that's the best feature of all. I've never seen that on any other touchscreen display. Now there's a lot of different touchscreens you can add on to your 3D printer via serial like this one, but given all the features that this one has, and the fact that you can emulate the old school full graphic display, I definitely think you should check this one out, and it's at a great price point. All the information will be in the description below. I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, please consider giving it a thumbs up or subscribing to my channel. If not, leave your thoughts in the comments below. And as always, thanks for watching.